The new Bleach arc has been an absolute pleasure to watch on a weekly basis. The 1000-Year Blood War is a masterpiece, and now it's going on a break as they work on the rest of the series. This has been my absolute favorite anime to watch in recent years, so it begs the question, where Bleach Game? It's been so long since we've had one, so I asked you guys on Twitter what kind of Bleach game you'd like to see, and I think we got enough replies, so let's do it. A lot of you seem to want an arena fighter, which is interesting because every time we get a new arena fighter, all I can hear is,
Wow, can't believe we're getting another arena fighter.
well, this is why. Because people like them. I've seen you guys mention a lot of the popular ones: Demon Slayer, Storm, One's Justice, even Kill la Kill. Some comments going as far as describing some of the systems they'd like to see, like a Bankai cancel or a full install for each character. The weapons in Bleach do make me feel like Kill la Kill would probably be the best fit if we had to choose a game to clone, but really good ideas all around. I also got a few asking for a Xenoverse style game. It's hard to say if it's for the combat or other Xenoverse features like character creation, but I do think that creating a character in Soul Society would be a pretty big deal. But if I had to pick a game where you create your own character in the Bleach universe, I'd probably go with a different type of combat than Xenoverse. Looking at past Bleach games, we did have a fairly unique arena fighter in the Blade Battler series, which you also mentioned. I was the perfect age when those games came out. I absolutely loved them. Nowadays, I think they're a bit too simple. Don't really like the way they feel anymore. Maybe they just didn't age super well. But I wouldn't be against seeing a new version of this. Needs that extra polish, needs to be modernized a lot, but I could definitely see it. We've also got quite a few requests for a new fighting game. Most of you referenced Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was expected. It's the best anime fighting game we ever got. I don't know if I would be down for a 3v3 Bleach game, maybe a 2v2 though, that would be awesome, if we're going the tag route. If we're going 1v1, the Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2 pull is a really good one. Most of the characters use weapons in that game already. Some have really weird abilities, just like in Bleach, but I do think that Rev 2 isn't beginner friendly enough for such a big anime IP. You need to be able to mash buttons and stuff happens. It's the rule of anime games. I'd love to see something like that, I just don't think it would ever happen. Soul Calibur is also a great pull. It's a weapon fighter already, less 2D and more 3D, though this might just be my personal preference. I think this style of game doesn't really fit with any anime IP. I think the games look great on their own, but if you put a Bleach character in there, it just feels out of place. It's like the movement is too smooth, doesn't feel anime enough, has that jump force look. Might just be me though, the Soul Calibur combat system totally lends itself to Bleach. And Bleach also had a few fighting games in the past. Shattered Blade, but with better controls. Why? You don't like going like this? Even with proper controls, I don't think that game's good. Heat the Soul, however, might be the closest that we ever got to a proper Bleach game. It never came out in the West, so I guess this would be the first Heat the Soul game over here, but Heat the Soul number 8 in Japan, or maybe they just reboot the whole series worldwide. I can't believe no one mentioned Blade of Fate or Dark Souls. The only problem those games had was coming out on the Nintendo DS, because other than that, they were really solid fighting games. Shumpo cancels or flash step cancels gave you so much creativity. I love that mechanic so much. Unique movesets for each character. It needed a big revamp to come to home consoles, but damn, that is a good starting point. However, these are the easy ideas, the safe ideas in many ways, the concepts that have been proven to work, and if they want to play it safe when making a Bleach game, these are precisely the games that you would go for. But personally, I would dare to dream higher. An Animal Crossing game where you build your Soul Society HQ in a new location and you get new furniture by playing minigames in the style of Mario Party. You play Tetris against Hollows, compatible with the Taito no Tatsujin controller. My editor is a troll. I've had this idea for a Bleach game for a while, and you guys actually nailed different aspects of it, but the same person never put it all together, so let's do it. At the core of this idea is Devil May Cry. After all, when you think of a protagonist with a big sword, Devil May Cry has to be amongst the first games to come to mind. And to me, the 1000-Year Blood War is the perfect stage to do something along the lines of Devil May Cry 5, where it cycles through different characters, each one with their own playstyle, their own combos, their own specialties. Feeling that each character plays differently is a big deal to me if we're gonna make a Bleach game. As for which characters would be playable, I think we would be getting into spoiler territory in the new arc, so I'm gonna name a few characters, but it is completely random just to give you some examples. I promise it has nothing to do with how this arc plays out. So first we have Ichigo. He's the quick striker of the game. Using both of his newly obtained blades, he strikes fast, focuses on air juggles, and high speed movement. Then we have Renji. He has a much bigger weapon. He focuses on dealing damage to multiple enemies at once, but he can be a bit weak when retracting his weapon back if an enemy makes it closer to him. So your slashes just have to be calculated, but you can catch a lot of enemies in the same attack. Finally, we have Ishida, the ranged character of the group. As the Quincy, he mainly attacks with his bow, and he would have area attacks that are quick or powerful single target attacks that he has to charge down, but he would be a lot weaker from close range. Now, I know what you're thinking, only 3 characters? Well, these are just examples. You'd probably have characters that are the most important to this arc in the long term. As long as their playstyles are unique, you could replace these with anyone else. But yes, you probably don't want a lot more than 3 characters. I get wanting to play as your favorite character. Heck, Kenpachi is my favorite character in Bleach of all time, and I didn't even include him, and that's because a lot of the development time is going into making each one of these characters feel complete and unique. You have to put in the time to give them complex movesets and give each one some combo variety and combo freedom so this game doesn't become Soul Resurrection. And for that goal, you can't have too many characters. And it's not just because it's very resource intensive to build many complex characters, which it is, but it's also bad for the player. If you have 10 very complex characters, imagine 10 characters in Devil May Cry 5, it can be overwhelming to learn all of them as you go through the levels. There's a big learning curve to each Devil May Cry character because those characters are complex enough to warrant that learning curve, and that learning curve is part of the fun. But if you're playing through the game with 10 different characters, by the time you return to the first one, you will have forgotten everything you've learned with that guy. That's ultimately why Devil May Cry 5 only had 3 playable characters and added Virgil later as DLC. We could maybe have a few more than 4 characters, but the more characters we have, the simpler they need to be, and I think that makes the game lose its appeal. Now, we have the Devil May Cry combat, but here's where the next piece comes into play. Instead of playing in linear levels, picking up collectibles and defeating every enemy on your path, I was thinking something more along the lines of a Soulslike, or a Souls Society-like. Apparently, some people think these two don't mix at all. They're direct opposites. One is all about style and the other one is about being deliberate and careful. And I get it, but we're talking about 2 different combat styles, 2 different approaches to exploration. And here we would take different elements from each other. You don't have Souls combat like at all. You just have Devil May Cry combat, but taking place in a Souls-like maze and Souls-like RPG systems. You don't pick up new weapons or anything like that, but you do get souls to level up each one of your characters and unlock new skills, just like in Devil May Cry. If you die, you drop your souls on the ground. You have to go and pick them back up. And as you explore Soul Society, you open up new areas, new shortcuts to advance faster next time you die, or doors that are locked from the other side, that sort of thing. I actually think we already got pretty close to this game concept a couple of times. Nioh was a big step in that direction, though to me it had too many closed off levels. It was like a collection of mini Souls levels throughout the game. I haven't played 2 yet, but I remember 1 being like that. And I was thinking of something much bigger. I want to be visiting different sections of Soul Society and fighting many bosses along the way without ever having to return to a menu. Soul Society in the middle of this war seems like the perfect setting to design a level around. And hey, yeah, we could have a menu with different zones, but one of those zones would be Soul Society, another one would be Hueco Mundo, and another one Karakura Town. Each one of these areas though would be much bigger than a Nioh level, something maybe closer to the original Demon Souls. Sekiro was also pretty close to this idea. That combat was a lot more stylish than previous Souls-likes, but still not enough for a Bleach game, I think. Devil May Cry Bayonetta style combat is what I would like to see. If anything, I think those games show us that this melding of genres could be possible, and if it's done well, it could definitely take the world by storm. To close this video and to close 2022 on this channel, a couple of honorable mentions. Ideas that I never thought of, submitted by you. 1, a Yakuza type game. I think what makes Yakuza work is how goofy everyone is in that world, and Bleach is definitely capable of goofy, but I don't know if this arc is the best time to be goofy because this stuff is pretty serious. Still, I'd love to see an alternate Bleach story with this setting. I think that'd be very fun. The idea of character creation in Bleach has always appealed to me, making your own Shinigami, choosing your starter squad, slowly developing your character, discovering your Shikai and your Bankai as you get stronger. That's also a good concept, but I'm missing what the actual gameplay would be. What's the combat? What's the quest design? What do you do? If you give players a lot of options for their character creation, and I mean gameplay wise, if you can choose like what effects your Shikai and your Bankai have, then you end up with a bunch of generic abilities, and that's a hard problem to solve, because you want to give players freedom, but too many options becomes a harder game to develop. And last but not least, to my surprise, we've got a couple of people actually interested in a turn-based RPG, which is such a breath of fresh air, since every time I react to a One Piece Odyssey trailer, I see nothing but hate towards that genre, so thank you for that. And speaking of One Piece, I believe this is the type of game you're looking for. What is One Piece Fighters? From roster to system mechanics, and probably the best story mode that I ever came up with. Happy New Year, folks. I'll see you in 2023.